and lots. And today we're going to be talking about something that's a portion of my business. Hi everybody, hi you wonderful people. I'm sending you lots of love and lots of blessings, especially during this very uneasy time. But today we're not talking about COVID-19. Today we're going to be talking about something that's even more beautiful. And I've got a special guest here. And we're going to be talking about something called compatibility. Now, I'm going to give you a little story. I'm just going to set the tone. Now, I saw a couple recently, Jamie and Liz, and they were married for about 3 years. But unfortunately, their journey together had to come to a halt. They came to me to actually see if they can actually patch things up together, but they didn't feel in sync with each other anymore. They fell out of love and they both didn't enjoy each other's company at all. Now, divorce for them was the only option. Now, I know this sounds familiar to so many people. This scenario is something so common nowadays. When I was looking at some of the stats, I was actually quite surprised that the divorce rate actually doubled in the last 4 decades. 40 years and relationships have been breaking, doubling in that aspect. So my big question is why? So do people get into relationships not knowing enough? Is love not enough anymore? Do couples need to find out to do compatibility tests before they actually get together? So I know for a fact that you don't get the perfect couple. There's no such thing as a perfect couple. You know, we learn to accept each other's imperfections. Now today I have the special guest, and he's all the way from Montreal, and his name is Stef Becker. Now I'm going to ask Stef to introduce himself because he's a man that's very busy. He's got 3 businesses and he's doing really, really well. And I love this whole philosophy of developing a lifestyle. And that's what I got really attracted to. And I love that. So welcome, Stef. Welcome to the 10 Relationship Sparks. And today we're talking about spark number 7, which is compatibility. Over to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me, first of all. So yes, a little bit more about myself. Business-wise, I am a digital marketer. So very much entrenched into lots of analytics, search engine optimization, taking care of websites, helping people be successful on the internet. So I've got clients across Canada, Europe, US. But at the same time, despite this analytical portion of my business, I'm a very spiritual kind of guy. So whenever I'm with my clients and the work I do, I always have this almost like a second pair of eyes looking at things that watch whatever happens in my life, family-wise, professionally-wise, and I interpret it as something that comes into my life for a specific reason. As I am a quite spiritual guy, I'm also very interested in different philosophies. I'm very specifically drawn to Hinduism, also much more Hinduism. I've got my spiritual guide in India. I do regular meditation practice. So I'm really, I'd say, quite deeply entrenched in understanding myself and my surroundings in a bigger picture of why I am here. So
Stef, I know that in your bio you said that you help people establish a lifestyle that allows them to be their own boss and to work from afar. And I know that you are very spiritual. It's weird how you have analytical and spirituality mixing so well. And I can actually feel your energies. It feels, you feel like quite a relaxed, chill person. So how do you actually allow this, this analytical mind and your spiritual mind to actually mix together to help your clients?
Yeah, very good question. It's, I think it's because I have those two sides that the analytical mind was drawing me to understand how to actually better orient, to better live, to better implement the spiritual side of my life. So, I've been working from home, running a digital marketing agency, working from home 95% of the time, or even more. And I always thought that it doesn't make sense to go out into an office, into a working environment, to generate or to make the revenue that's required to live a life that you'd really like to live. It's almost like I have to suffer somewhere to be able to be happy somewhere else.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me. So I said to myself, okay, I get it. I mean, there are people very happy in what they're doing as a life, right? And as a business life, in their profession. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy in the sense of doing what they would really like to do if they had the free choice to do that, right? So I wanted to analyze how is it possible to combine free choice and happiness while working on something that helps you make a living. So. And 10 years ago, I decided, okay, I have to find something that I really love, and I have to find a way to bring that love into something that people are willing to pay for. So, and that's also the reason why now I'm working on this online course, which has been opened a few weeks ago only, which is called My Lifestyle Business, where I actually teach people or help them to understand how to build a business working from home, without putting success or family life, without separating both. Because if you're doing what you really like to do and you love to do it, then it's possible to do it from home, meaning being with family, seeing your kids grow up, being with your partner. Obviously, it presupposes a little bit of changing things in your natural environment at home, but it's perfectly possible. And the way it starts, and that's also why I teach in my course, is there's a concept in Japan called Ikigai. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Ikigai comes from a little island. I don't remember the name off the shores of Japan, and Ikigai basically means life purpose. And in order to establish your Ikigai, what those Japanese people, and that's by the way the island where we find the population which is the oldest people on Earth, on planet Earth, living happy lives. They ask themselves 4 questions. What do I love? What am I good at? What does the world need? Now you're looking outwards. And then, what can I get paid for? And when those 4 questions, or the answers to those 4 questions meet in one central point, you found your business purpose or your purpose in life, because everything comes together. You find your passion, you find your purpose, you find your skills. What am I good at? But you also find this very important question. Okay, I know all that, but would people be actually ready to pay something for those type of services?
Yeah, and how to change that passion into profit, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, but at the same time, always remaining true to yourself. That's very important in this process, right? That you do something that you really love what you're doing. And funnily enough, I'm a digital marketing guy, so I love digital marketing. But at the same time, by building these courses, I discovered a whole new thing about myself, and I discovered how much I love teaching, which was not the case
Absolutely,
before.
Yeah, and then you start to find that niche. That you love teaching. So now I'm going to bring you back to this very important question. Like, you teach people how to have this perfect lifestyle. And in that perfect lifestyle, I think having a good relationship is actually important with your spouse or your partner. Now, what is your definition of compatibility in relationships?
the definition of compatibility. First of all, let me answer the question the other way around. What is not compatibility? I'd say if people look or ask themselves the question if they are compatible with somebody or somebody is compatible with them, very often they look for the ideal other being that fits perfectly well with generally whatever type of your definition of happiness is. For me, that's not what compatibility is when it comes to a relationship. Compatibility for me means being with somebody that complements you in areas where you are not necessarily high up enough in terms of specific aspects of the way you react to certain things, the way you think about certain things, the way you behave, the way you react, etc. So for me, compatibility means to be with somebody who understands and respects you the way you are, not the way you should be to make them happy. So, and that's, you wanted to ask the question. I saw your fingers raising.
No, but also in the same aspect, like how that person needs to compliment you and they lift you up where you need to be lifted up. But at the same time, I think it needs to be both ways. Like if you are there for your partner would be there for you. You don't expect it, but you assume that your partner would be there for you, complement each other. Now, what really happens, like if you think about relationships, think about your own relationship too. What really happens when we are not compatible? Or is it you start a relationship knowing that you're compatible? Or is it you go into a relationship and you grow into finding out each other's compatibility to each other?
Well, no, of course there's a portion of in a relationship. If you're not growing in that relationship with your partner, then there's no way of being with somebody. But at the same time, I think it's a lot of making things in such a way that they work out. It's not just things fall in place. So if, for example, I give you tiny examples in my own life, my own relationship with my wife, and it's quite difficult, really, I have to admit, to find points where we disconnect, because we really found a way of working things out together in a very nice way. And I've got a son, 10-year-old son, so there's quite a dynamic. But whenever there's something, the first thing that I see with both my wife and myself is to step back. And to have this look on the situation, and to involve your intellect and your mind to reflect of what was just happening, and to then provide a different type of answer that you may have provided reacting impulsively. So it's really that respect towards the other person. To respect, first of all, to admit that she's not perfect just as much as I'm not perfect.
Absolutely.
And that is for me the complementary part. It's just like not expecting something from somebody else. That's the first and very important portion. I mean, it's first of all, it's for me accepting people as they are, and they will never be perfect, because otherwise we would not be human beings. This is a planet of imperfect beings, right? So we have been catapulted on this world after how many reincarnations, I don't know, for a very specific reason. And that reason is to elevate ourselves progressively through time, through different lives, until we reach a state which we call divine or whatever. But while we are on that path, one of the first and foremost important things is to accept the other person as they are, while at the same time incorporating things that are lacking when it comes to our own ways of thinking, our ways of being, our ways of reflecting. And that's only possible when you take that step back and you look at the situation with two different eyes.
So when you see, I know many couples, when they are seeing or they are experiencing a disagreement, or they are questioning something with each other, they don't see, when they are angry and upset and frustrated and the shouting starts and the ranting starts, they don't have that moment to actually step out. So when you refer to the way you and your wife, the way you and your partner does it, how long is that process where you step out, you reflect instead of react?
Mm-hmm. It's actually very fast, and it has to be very fast. But the thing is not how fast do I react. It's how to learn to react in the first place. How to learn that there is a possibility, first of all, to step back. If you don't think about it, a lot of people head into the anger, have an impulsive reaction, and never think about the possibility to change that, or don't know how to change it. And obviously, through my spiritual practice, one of the, I think, very important, I'd say easy practices is sitting down every day, even if it's just 5 minutes, and to practice mindfulness meditation. Because mindfulness meditation means to observe everything you're doing or even thinking by being completely with yourself, doing with what you're doing. If it's washing your hands, you're washing your hands. You're not having your minds wander to somewhere else. You wash your hands. If you peel an orange, you're peeling an orange. And that is mind control. Not in the sense of controlling your mind, but in the sense of becoming perceptive that there is something that allows you to look at something, but in order to be able to have a reaction or to have an impact on that, what you're doing, you need to adopt this view on this, what you're doing, with a mind which is there in this very moment. And when you start practicing,
so staying in the present and somebody, I once heard somebody say, this is how what I do when I'm meditating or being mindful of what I'm doing. We can't cry about the dead past because it's dead and gone, and we can't become anxious about the unborn future because it's hasn't even given birth as yet. So we have to plunge ourselves into the present and now. And whenever I need to plunge myself in the now, I visualize myself, I love swimming. So I visualize myself, on a diving board, just about to dive. And I look at this pool as my now. So that is how I remind myself to plunge myself into the present and now. And so for me, being compatible, and I've seen this in so many cases, we don't know when to trust our partners. When people start to lose trust and faith in their partners, you'd find that slowly they start to distance themselves. And while distancing themselves, they find excuses and reasons to actually break that relationship instead of making it work. And when they start to see that they don't share the same interests anymore, and they are not very open to changing or tweaking some of their behavior so that it fits in with to make it a harmonious working relationship. And I also find a lot that nowadays people give up very easily. Nobody wants to fight. Nobody wants to actually look and see, what can I remember? What did I love about you when I first saw you? Those first moments, I don't think many couples spend enough time remembering and reminiscing and talking about, because when they do that, they realize that just that memory just makes their mind just flow with that love and with that energy. And you need that energy to actually take you to the next part of your journey. Nowadays, I find like so many people, they want to throw in the towel so easily. As soon as they find that something they're not compatible with, or something that they might, even the compatibility of the way you think and your mindset and things like that. And people are so easily to just throw in the towel. And I find that really sad. Now, do you have any tips or advice that you could give to people that's just starting out a relationship? When it comes to compatibility.
Just starting out a relationship. Well, if it's about starting out a relationship, it boils down, for me at least, to the very simple fact to listen to what your heart says. When beyond the words that are pronounced and beyond the the behaviors that can be observed, your heart knows very quickly whether or not there is something real, something not so real, very compatible, something loving or not. And basically it boils down to make sure that you're connected to yourself, because you know, whatever we see in media, on the internet, on YouTube or whatever, we get all those images of those presupposedly beautiful and happy lives, which is obviously a complete brainwashed version of what lives are really.
All sense of realities.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of, you know, advertisement and marketing, and I'm working in that field, so I know a little bit what I'm talking about. So yeah, it's not always easy if you are bombarded with superficiality when it comes to relationships, because you try to superimpose that to your own relationship and to your own partner, and obviously that's not going to work, because that's infinitively more complex. It's again a philosophical answer that I'd like to provide as well. It's if you understand that there's a reason for you meeting that person at that specific moment in time, then you may ask yourself why and what you could learn with that partner, with that relationship that came into your life. Mm-hmm. Nothing at all in our lives happens by happen chance. There is no such thing than happen chance. Even if it is perceivable as something that happens by chance, it never is. And if you take the decision to get rid of something, get rid of someone, because, hey, he's not compatible, or, oh, look, very interesting, that person as well. That's the easy choice. Because if there was something that you were supposed to learn with that person, and you refuse it because it's easier to refuse the difficulty part in that, and you go for something else, guess what? It comes back in a different form, in a different disguise with that other person or with another person, because it always comes back. That's the reason for you being here, meeting those people, those circumstances, having those thoughts, etc. You have that possibility of free choice. You can reject it. But it will always come back in one form or the other. So for me personally, that helped a lot as well to determine, wait a minute, it's easier to walk away. Yes, but will that actually be beneficial for me as a person? And the answer invariably is no. It doesn't mean that you always accept everything coming from a person because he came into your life or he came into your life. There's a point where you, talking about karmic seeds, you have learned about not accepting being treated the way that person is treated. When that realization comes, you have got rid of that karmic seed and you're allowed to move on. So either that person becomes loving, accepting, and whatever it's required to have a happy relationship, or you have the right to move on. But not just because of it, it's easier to flush the person and to move on. That's not the right way of doing it.
The reason why I asked you about young relationships is because I've got a 23-year-old and I've got a 20-year-old. And my daughter asked me, Mommy, how do you know when that person's the right person? And I told them exactly, you have this feeling in your heart and you know in your soul that that is somebody that you are drawn to. But I also told both of them that whenever you are in doubt, always ask yourself, how would that person actually be around our dinner table? Because compatibility is not just, like from an Indian family, our extended families mean a lot to us, and I know many other people around the world, they also feel that way. Now, around our dinner table, the laughter that takes place, the love that we share when we share food. So that's my one thing I tell them. Think about, would that person stick out like a sore thumb and will just not be compatible and fit in? Or would that person actually, be with us and not be sitting there judging us, but being part of us, or we welcoming that person into our family? And I think to them, that actually is a really good yardstick, because they know what family expectations, not expectations, more like family love is. And I guess young couples, when they only see the hearts and they only see the superficial love and they cannot connect deeper because they are so, that relationship is so young, they would have to find other mechanisms to put in place to see whether that relationship would actually survive in years to come.
Yeah.
I also feel like part of being compatible is also getting along with your partner. And you know that being compatible with your partner, you have to be able to get along with them. And nowadays, you'd find that even in families, people don't get along. You know, brothers and sisters stop talking, or parents stop talking to their kids for silly reasons. And there's so much of frustration and anger in relationships nowadays. And very few of them are actually willing to give it, to actually step back and see, you know, how can they make things better? Whereabout did that compatibility that they once have, whereabout did they lose it? And do you see many of your clients in similar ways?
When it comes to stepping back or to, well, let's say, let me give you an example, a personal example. So I've been in Canada for now 20 years. I've got two brothers, which are still in Germany. I'm German, originally, I'm German. And for example, there's one of my brothers with which the relationship is quite difficult with any member of the family. Because he's got certain ideas that are not shared in terms of our common values. I myself was falling into that, not falling, adopted that behavior in terms of rejection when it comes to it. And at some point, I just was lifting my head, thinking about it. And then I said to myself, well, wait a minute. You are that, so to speak, spiritual person. You are that open-minded person, that loving person. You have your guru in India. You have your friends with which you do meditation every week. And you're not able of trying to understand or to approach the conflictual situation with your own brother. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, how can I approach it? And the very simple approach that I did was an approach of compassion. Yes, he made a few errors, big errors as well. But I said to myself, well, he is just on the same path than I am in this life. He's there for a reason, and he's also my brother for a reason. So if he has this problem, not being accepted with the entire family, then is it not my responsibility to make that step towards him, although it will be very difficult in terms of the conversation with him. But it came out of the thought of compassion. Because he was, although he does not accept it openly, not talking about it, he must be suffering from it. It's impossible that you are feeling rejected by almost the entire family and not feel sad about it, right?
That's a deep emotion to hold within yourself.
So if he feels sad, feels rejected, has built this armor around him, well, I don't care, which is a completely false armor. It's not true, right? It's just like a face. Then the only way to pierce that armor is with compassion and with love. So at some point in time, I just gave him a call just to show him that I'm around. And I talked about the weather that's outside, because anything else would be conflictual right away, and you don't want to get into that flow. And at least I have established a contact with him, and I integrate that into my gratitude practice every morning and into my meditation, just to send the positive vibes, the positive energy, which is pretty much everything I can do at this level. But the rejection energy that somebody would receive, and you know it probably as much as I, thoughts are energy. And not just our behaviors and our words, even our thoughts have to be controlled and managed in such a way that do not hurt people. So accepting to change your thoughts and your behaviors, obviously, in regards to another person, specifically if it's a brother or a loved one or a relationship, because we're talking about people in a relationship, there are always situations that are conflictual. There's anger, there's rejection, there's disappointment, whatever. When that happens, just tell yourself, this is part of the path that I have chosen for myself, because a karmic relationship is something you choose before you came back to this life. So if you have chosen this for yourself in this life, you got to deal with it. And you've got to develop that possibility for compassion for that other person, even in a relationship, because otherwise it will come back in a different form or a different person.
Yes, so, and I always also tell myself that I also teach that in this lifetime, this is our training ground. This is a training ground where whatever we are lacking, we can practice and practice and practice and get better at it. So that when we leave this form, we will be entering our next form being even more wise, full of wisdom and more enlightenment. And that is how I feel like we need to, you were talking about complementing each other. And it is our duty. You know, the Bhagavad Gita talks about duty. And I have to perform a duty as a wife. So where my husband might lack, I need to teach him. And where I lack, he needs to be able to teach me. But we can only teach each other if the egos are away. If the egos has disappeared. Because if we teach each other from a judgmental, egotistical way, it's not a training ground. It becomes a battlefield.
And it's something that very nicely nicely practiced with meditation. Meditation of serving God, you suddenly get to that understanding that you are maybe not this, but you're maybe not even this mind. So who are you? And the one who identifies with all that is our ego. So at some point in time, meditation as a practice helps us understand that and overcome it as well. And once you understand that, or you start at least to integrate the possibility that it can be this way, your ego becomes very quickly diminished, because if you are not
ego goes.
What's the purpose of ego? Right.
My spiritual master always says that when there's ego, he goes. That divine energy goes. I also feel like I'll give you an example where, you know, sometimes we need to do things out of our comfort zone, especially with our partners. And for us to become more compatible, we have to understand each other. So, and we'll also step out of that comfort zone. And I remember the first word my husband, when we met up on the first date he took me out, he says, he mentioned something about compromise. In a relationship, it's about compromising. And that word compromise is always stuck in my head. And I think we are married now for 25 years. And I think a lot has to do with how we compromise and complement each other. Like, for example, my husband always used to say, you know, you have to learn how to play golf. It's so good. It's such nice feelings being on the green. And guess what? I actually went a few years ago, went on a little a golf course, and actually started playing golf. And I loved it. I love it. And I still love it. And I love being on the green with him. But also in the same respect, we went on a holiday recently, and I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love doing all the things.
Bungee jumping.
We went paragliding. So he stepped out of a mountain for me, and he enjoyed it. So I think when it comes to compatibility, is being able to know how to fit together, like a glove. And when there's spaces or holes in that glove, we need to find ways of mending it. And because this is the journey, this is our training ground. Now, I know I'm going to be finishing. Let me see what's the time. Gosh. So I'm going to ask you one last question.
Yeah.
For those people that are on long-term relationships, and sometimes I notice, like many people, when they are in a relationship for a long time, they tend to be there, but also not be there. So for example, they start to take things for granted, and they start to live this mundane life where it revolves around, it revolves around work, finance, and the substance of that relationship diminishes. And especially some couples that are close to retirement, and their lives have become monotonous. That spark has lost, and they feel like they're not compatible anymore. But they're now in that relationship because they feel like they need to see that relationship through. So do you have any advice for those people that seems to have lost a little bit of their compatibility, or it's just lingering in the background, but they need to strengthen it again for the next journey of their life?
Yeah. I think it boils down to making appointments. I've been with my wife now for 15 years, a little bit less. And it's true. After some time, you know each other so well, everything runs smoothly, that some of the initial ingredients that brought you together, the passion, everything diminishes. But I think in order to keep a relationship on a level that's beneficial and enriching for both, is to simply establish appointments during the week. For example, and I have to get better at this as well with my wife, I have to be very honest.
Date night.
Yes. Say again?
Date night.
Yeah, no, exactly. Date night. We Thursday evenings, we now organize, well, not babysitter, because now he's 10 years old, but somebody takes care of Alexander, playing with him while we go out doing something specific. It can be a theater, it can be a restaurant, or whatever. But the promise is that this outing, this going out, is almost like a mindfulness meditation where we will be present for the other for the duration of that outing. And suddenly, guess what? There are questions which we don't ask ourselves or to the couple during the week. There are discussion points that never came up before. Because, well, guess what? You go into that space again where you look at things afresh. But for that to happen, you have to break the routine, right? And that's why I'm talking about making appointments, date nights or whatever. But make them specific. But tonight we're talking about our vacation and what we like to do during our annual vacation, and let's plan it that day, and let's talk about our passions and what we like.
Mm-hmm.
Another time, let's talk about what we like in terms of cultural visits of museums or music halls or theater or opera. Let's talk about what we like, and suddenly it becomes a discussion of something that either is reminded because you've forgot for a long time, or something new comes up. And you say, oh, I didn't know that was something you liked. So even after 15 years, you just suddenly discover things like this. But for this to happen, to really have to make a conscious choice, you have to get out of the couch and stand up, put a point in the calendar, and make it happen. And as they say, as I teach also in my online courses, if you don't schedule it, it doesn't exist. So you have to.
And you know how you need to be in sync to be compatible? You also need to make sure that your calendars are in sync and put in that date night so that you go back to the times and you remember the times when you first started dating, you know that, and you get that little buzz in your tummy and you get that butterflies in your, it's a beautiful feeling, and I think we need to experience that more often. Now, when I work with my couples, I love to get them to sit across each other, and their knees touch and their hands, they hold hands together. And I do this visualization with them where I tell them to breathe and to focus on their breath. And I tell them to go back to the very first time they laid eyes on their partners and how they felt. And they start to talk to each other with their eyes closed. And when they open their eyes and they look at each other, that feeling of connection, it's like, you know, you connect to that soul that that beautiful untouched soul that was missing that connection. And it's a beautiful feeling. And I think instead of doing it when people need to do it in therapy, they need to do that more often.
Okay. Yeah.
So maybe tonight you do that with your wife or with your partner, and I'll do it again with my husband.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I have this practice of gratitude that you may know. Every morning when I get up, as soon as my 2 feet touch the ground, I close my eyes, open my hands, lay them down, and I'm just being grateful for the day that lies ahead of me and everything I have. The family, a beautiful home, a beautiful relationship, everything we have. We are so rich when you compare us to other countries and people, and to just be grateful and to include into that being grateful for the relationship and to honor that relationship by being there for that other person and creating those moments where you can feel what you were just describing. And why not doing a gratefulness exercise together, sitting right in front of each other with the hands open and then looking at each other after 2 minutes or 1 minute of closed eyes. It's a very nice exercise. Good idea.
And it's also a nice exercise where you get them to, where couples stand in front of each other without touching or anything, but you just look at each other's eyes, no talking. And it's weird how the connection also deepens, because most of my couples, first the giggle starts and the laughter starts, but then when the silence takes over again, the tears start to roll, and then they realize how much they miss each other. And they miss that deep connection. I have to say thank you so much for doing this. And I feel everything that you've said, this connection that you spoke about, the training grounds, the karmic purposes that we have to fulfill on this earth. It's a journey. And like we said, that nobody's perfect. And every couple, they find their own ways of making themselves, you know, appreciating the imperfections in that relationship. I want to say thank you so much. I'll definitely put all your details, attach it to this video so that people can contact you. And it's a time and it's a platform where we all are learning and growing together. And that's what I love most beautifully about connecting like this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the nice interview. Loved it.
I'm glad that you did. I'm really glad.